When you give me the thumbs up, I will. Perfect. All right. Sorry for the delay, everybody that's tuning in on Facebook and YouTube. Tonight is Thursday, September 12th, Planning Board meeting. First item on the agenda is call to order. Then the second item is roll call. Dr. Benoit.
Here.
Dr. Roberts.
Here.
Mr. Menard.
Here.
And the vice chair is here. Item number 3, minutes. Review and approval of the July 17th, 2024 Planning Board meeting minutes. Give everybody a minute to review them as they can. And if there are no amendments, we will look for a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I see a need for a typo correction.
Okay.
Under item 8, in regards to High Rocks, in the center of the listing under item 8, Mr. Casey has concerned about the density in the water, density in the area, and getting water from the Blackstone. That infers the Blackstone River. So let's put the town of Blackstone.
Sounds good. All right.
I have no other.
Okay. Then we'll look for a motion to approve as amended.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I wasn't here, so I'm not voting.
I wasn't here either.
I will second then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let me go back to the agenda here. So item number 4, disclosure. Planning board members shall disclose potential conflicts on matters before the board this evening. Any? Because I think we're only looking at zoning ordinances, so I don't think we have any that would be a potential conflict. And then item number 5, disclosure and notice. Planning board members shall disclose any ex parte communications about any contested or material adjudicatory facts or opinions concerning the merits of any application before the board. Anybody? Okay. Item number 6 is declaration of voting members. So this evening it will be Dr. Benoit, Dr. Roberts, Mr. Menard, and myself, with the chair and our 2 alternates absent this evening. And then we are on to item number 7, amendment to the North Smithfield zoning ordinance. And there's a lot here, so I'm just going to turn that over to, oh, yes.
Let me interrupt, Mr. Chair. I just realized, if there were 2 abstentions on that vote to approve the minutes failed at this point because you need 3 out of 5.
Okay,
So that means the motion to approve the minutes failed
fails.
for lack of a quorum.
Okay, so let's put that on the agenda for the
Just
next
put on the next meeting.
planning board meeting for review and approval then. Thank you for calling
Yeah,
that to our attention.
I just realized.
We're correct in not to abstain voting, right?
No, you could vote.
You could vote.
You could vote on the minutes. You could approve. You don't have to be there for the minutes, but if you.
But not knowing what was actually said.
Right.
so that's your problem.
Unless there's some need from the planning department that they need a vote tonight, I don't think one meeting
Okay.
makes any difference. I
Okay.
just didn't want it to be on the record as if approved with 2 votes. I don't think I
Perfect,
can.
all right. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Solicitor. So we will table the meeting minutes from July 17th, 2024, and put those onto our next planning board meeting. Okay, so then we'll move back over to amendment, item number 7, amendment to the North Smithfield zoning ordinance.
As the planning board is aware, last year the General Assembly passed numerous items for land use legislation for zoning and subdivisions. The town is currently working on updating its zoning regulations. We have Supriya Keller from Innes Associates to give us a presentation or discussion on 3 items: adaptive reuse, unified development review, and development plan review. These have been before the zoning and planning working group, and they're here before the planning board for a recommendation to the town council as an amendment to our zoning code.
Good evening, everyone. As Mark said, I'm Supriya Kelkar, and I'm representing Innes Associates today. The 2023 legislation all the new land use and zoning bills were passed with a goal of increasing housing supply and streamlining development and addressing zoning ordinances in the state. What that has done is made the existing zoning non-compliant, and my colleague Emily covered a lot of that in the April 11th presentation. So one of the key tasks that while we are rewriting the text, one of the key tasks that we are also entrusted with is to educate the community to what these changes are, changes and updates are. And we have conducted an introductory public workshop on 21st August. We will be present at the annual Pumpkin Fest on 21st September of this month, and continue our efforts to reaching out to the community, and then followed by a final public workshop on 17th October. So today on the agenda, we have three sections, as Mark. Today on the agenda, we have three sections, as Mark mentioned. I will walk through the key highlights and updates for each of them, and then defer to the town and the town solicitor. I didn't have a presentation prepared because we don't trust a projector, but for the adaptive, the adaptive reuse, this is a new section that will be added into the zoning ordinance. This allows for existing commercial buildings to be repurposed for residential developments. Conversion of at least 50% will be for residential use will be permitted use by right. Developers would be added to the density bonuses that they will be provided. Developers will be exempt from off-street parking requirements and to no more than one space per dwelling unit. There was a minimum 15 dwelling units density requirement that we have capped as maximum in the new text. I'm just going to, those are the key highlights of the document. If there are any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Just for the planning board's edification, we had a discussion about this adaptive reuse several months ago. Basically, what it is allowing developers to do is, if you've got a commercial building and you're going to convert 50% or more of that building to residential, you're allowed to do that by right. You're allowed to do that in any zoning district, and the density is predetermined. The statute says a minimum of 15 units per acre. So some communities could do more than 15. We've decided we're going to cap it at 15 units per acre to not to exceed. That is compliant with the code. The other change that would be indicated in here is the maximum of one parking space per unit, which is something that is now being dictated to local communities. The other aspect of it is the remainder of the structure, if it's used for something that is non-residential, it still needs to comply with the zoning requirements for parking and landscaping and everything else for the district in which it is located and for the use that is being proposed. So the real restriction is residential use is allowed in any zone in an adaptive reuse. The density cannot be less than 15 units per acre. Well, it can be if the developer decides to have it less than 15 units per acre, but the statute requires 15 units per acre, and it's one parking space per unit. So those are I think those are the highlights of this section of that code.
So just to make sure I'm clearly understanding, and this is for me, that the 15 units per acre is a minimum by law, but we're stipulating that it's 15 maximum per acre. Okay.
Right, that's
Okay.
right.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I was hearing that. Here, it hurt, the way that we worded it just sounded a little funny, so I just
Yeah,
wanted to make sure.
the statute says it shall be a minimum of 15 units per acre.
Okay, and that's our cap. We're
That
going to say
we've decided
maximum
15 units per
15,
acre
okay.
is the maximum. Although a developer, as I said, Mr. Porter, a developer, if they're inclined to, they could request less than 15
Right,
units per
okay,
acre.
okay. So the developer is not required to do 15 per acre, they can, okay, perfect. And then can you just for the off-street parking. Could you just review that one more time?
So under our code, residential is 2 spaces per dwelling unit.
Okay, so we're doing 1 per dwelling unit.
It's mandated
Okay.
that it cannot exceed 1 space per dwelling unit.
Okay. And that-
Although the developer could he could present more than 1 space
Okay,
per dwelling.
and that's strictly for off-street parking?
That is off-street parking related to the residential use.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Dr.
Question
Benoit.
for the planner. The very first line talks about adaptive reuse of existing commercial structures
Correct.
into residential. But then you stated that in any zone, this adaptive reuse could be done.
Correct.
Commercial is a specific zone, but when you say it can go into any zone, I need some clarification in my head.
Well, a commercial structure will be a non-residential structure, right? So there's no zone in the North Smithfield zoning ordinance called commercial. We have business neighborhood, we have business highway, we have, several different zones. So if it's a non-residential structure in it, as you go deeper in, it gives you examples of those types of structures that they are referring to. It could be a church, it could be a retail building, it could be any type of building that is a non-residential building. If you convert a minimum of 50% of the floor area to residential, this section kicks in. So I say regardless of zone, because a lot of our non-residential zones do not allow residential land uses currently. Well, this is going to supersede that.
One more issue. I believe I heard, and I could have heard wrong, that the governor recently signed the removal, signed into law, the elimination of residential in the industrial zone. Did I hear correctly, or is that?
There was some legislation, I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing, but I think we probably are. There was legislation before the General Assembly in the last session that was going to allow residential uses in industrial zones. That did not pass.
That's what I'm referring to. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I just want to make 2 points. One, as you know.
Just make sure your microphone's on.
As you know, this board made the decision based upon the recommendation of the planner that whatever the state says is the minimum, we were going to incorporate the minimum in our statute, because the state, that's the approach of all these ordinances. That's number one. And number two, I just wanted to give an example, an actual example. In the town of Coventry, there was an old fire station in the middle of a residential zone that got converted under adaptive reuse just recently, because I do some work in Coventry, and that fire station had very little parking, and it ended up having, it ended up having adaptive reuse, residential units, and there wasn't going to be any more commercial at all. But that's an example, Doc, of a commercial type building in a residential zone that smack dab, that's what it's about. These old buildings, maybe pre-existing, the zone may have been changed, and you come in and you want to put residential in it, you want to convert it, the answer is yes. Did that make sense?
I see a typo in front of me. In the paragraph that starts secondly, you go to the last full line, which will no include. That's my French. Let's put it to
Thank you.
So, Mr. Carullo, this basically creates almost like an overlay district for the entire town. It says you can do adaptive reuse.
Yeah,
In any way.
an overlay district related to commercial structures, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could look at it that way,
Yeah.
sure.
Slowly
But-
overlay.
Yeah, and it's a by right overlay. Most overlays are incorporated via a zone change.
Yep, yep. No, I'm trying to put it into kind of layman's terms so that everybody in town can understand that, this will now apply to any and all commercial, non-residential buildings but this is
Yeah,
a state law change that we really had no control over.
You have no discretion. So for example, I think on 146, there's a vacant CVS building there. Some people were talking about maybe using that for a new police station or something. If a developer came in, acquired that building, and wanted to develop that building for 50% or more residential, it'd be 15 units per acre on that lot for that building, and that building would be converted.
Walgreens, but yes.
Walgreens, I'm sorry, yeah, thank
No,
you.
you're good.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to send a positive recommendation to the town council for the proposed zoning amendment
For the
we
adaptive
just
reuse.
discussed.
Okay. Very good. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Roll call vote. Dr. Benoit,
Yes,
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Menard,
Yes.
and the vice chair votes yes. Mhm. All right, on to the next one.
Okay. The second one is Unified Development Review. This was previously an option. It is now a required process to be included. This just gives the planning board more power. The laws now require municipalities to give planning board authority to grant zoning relief. At the same time, you can also conduct review of the project proposal. So the planning board can now actually make binding decisions on zoning matter, and appeals from the planning board would directly go to the Superior Court, a subset of the Superior Court, the Land Court. And this procedure is basically in place to save time in the permitting process, so people don't have to go to multiple boards for the same project. Again, just the key highlights from Unified Development Review.
Okay, does the board have any comments on that? Comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, this is,
Yes.
we did review, the planning board did review one of these projects in May, I think, that was for the temporary cell tower. So you're somewhat familiar with the Unified Development Review, and that project needed special use permit in conjunction with the development plan review. The planning board sat both as the zoning and planning board and reviewed them simultaneously or sequentially on the same evening. This is the actual written ordinance that will be implementing that.
Okay. And again, this eliminates basically our preliminary hearing and goes straight into master plan, right?
It eliminates your master plan.
Master plan, sorry.
Yeah, so a project will come to you if it needs zoning relief and a development plan review. The first aspect of the project that you would review would be the zoning relief, either dimensional variance, a special use permit, or both.
Okay.
You'd have to review and approve that, and then the next stage would be the development plan review, which would be coming in at preliminary. And each approval is contingent upon the other.
Okay. Because I know we had spoken about at one point making the pre-application review mandatory. So is that included in this unified review?
Well, it's not in this unified, it is
Okay.
not in this unified review, but see, this is zoning ordinance,
Okay, okay.
and
So am I missing?
pre-app could be in subdivision regulations.
Okay, okay. I didn't know.
Development review regulations.
Again, I think the most important thing about this is to understand that you now have the power to grant the zoning relief at the same time as the application.
Okay,
You can and you do have a right to put in your subdivision regulations that you encourage a pre-app. I don't think you can mandate it, but you can encourage it. And most developers will want that,
yep.
because they don't like to just jump to the master plan where they gotta have the entire engine, because really, eliminating master plan, most developers are really not happy with that. They don't like the speed at which that gets granted, but master plan, they get to come before you with a less detailed level of engineering, as you well know, and they get a real feel about whether it's gonna be successful before they spend $100,000 or whatever. But, I don't think you'll ever have a problem getting most developers to come for a pre-app.
Okay.
I don't know, I'll defer to Mark, but
I didn't know if we needed to change our language in that portion to say
No, this is the
to highly
zoning.
encourage.
That would be in the subdivision regs,
Subdivision
but the developers that have been coming, and I think, the Pines, that Pines
Yep.
LMI, I think we had a couple of, we had a gas station last year, we had a gas station car wash. They're actually coming to us and say, we want to do the pre-app because we don't want to be, we want to get feedback from the planning board to see their inclination. We don't, as David said, we don't want to be investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in due diligence and site research and state permits if we're going to get, you know, if the planning board's not inclined to approve it, so.
Okay, okay. Very good then. Mr. Menard?
So just with the planning board now doing zoning, some of the zoning board job, does it leave the planning board open for any scrutiny if somebody were to challenge it and go to the next level and you know, say, go to take it to court? Is anybody is a planning board member affected by that? That's the question.
Not any more than you are now. Just so you keep in mind, the process is, when a unified application has to come before you, you have to grant or deny the zoning first. If you deny the zoning, then that's the end, essentially. But you have to grant the zoning first under the zoning standards, and then after that, you then approve the plan under the planning standards. So as long as you're operating within the scope of your authority under the statute, you have what they call, you know, essentially limited immunity. You know, as long as you're doing things properly, you have, when I say immunity, I'm talking about personal liability. The town still defends you. They can still sue to reverse the decision, but they can't. The only time you are personally liable is if, and we have had situations where individual members go outside the scope of their authority and get involved in trying to undermine a developer behind the scenes. That's a different ballgame. You better hire your own attorney, because that's going to create liability to the town and yourself. But as long as you're doing your job in the open here, you'll be protected and defended by the interlocal trust and myself, both the trust insurance and our office. That's a long-winded way of saying you have no additional liability.
I don't want to use the word ignorance, but we haven't been trained or have any knowledge of the full zoning. So if we rule on something, I think that's where I'm going at, right? So we could effectively approve something that if it really went the old way to the zoning board, it would have never been approved.
The planner and I had long discussions about this. When we get these documents approved in whatever form you desire to approve them and the council approves them, we plan on having a review of, you got to adopt new subdivision regulations, and that process is going to be reviewed because the planning board's responsibilities changed, but also how the zoning works. So there's going to be, technically, even though all of you are old, you know.
Careful.
Seasoned.
Seasoned.
You are seasoned. In the area of planning, we are all operating, that's why we brought in experts, and we are all operating in a new world. And I don't want to make this meeting any longer, but we have had discussions about trying to do a number of orientations, especially not only for the existing members, but we also want to have a package together. Every time a new member we want to do all the zoning, all the planning, ethics, APRA, open meetings. We want to have a whole orientation. So again, after this council is elected, if I'm still around, we're going to go through all that. If I'm not, Mark will go through it with you, with whoever is.
All right, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. It's always good to have a refresher, especially with some of these workshops that we could have for our alternate meetings. That'd be great.
Mr. Chairman, based
Yes.
upon the planning department recommendations and findings, I make a motion to send a positive recommendation to the town council to adopt this unified development review modification to the ordinance.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? I will second. Roll call vote. Dr. Benoit?
Yes?
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Menard?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes. All right. Let's knock this last one out then, huh?
Okay. So the development plan review, the last one on the agenda, it includes a new definition of a development plan review. The permitting authority definition has been expanded to include the administrative officer. Now, the development plan review will consist of an administrative process and a formal review process. the formal review process, which will be in 2 steps, the preliminary plan and the final review plan. And the administrative officer can combine these 2 processes and make it one with certain conditions. And we have also updated what classifies under which plan, like which process, the administrative versus the formal plan.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I'm assuming the administrative force would be the planner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Could we have a little bit of information about when they can be combined, what those conditions are, just so we understand that?
Well, even under the statute now, prior to this, the planning board, the planner had the ability to combine approval, phases of approval. However, in this particular instance, if it was a simple project that had come in, it was maybe I'm just giving you a subjective example, where, let's say it was a commercial building and they wanted to go from, it was an office building, they want to go from an office building to, you know, a general retail building, and they didn't require any additional parking. They were using the existing building, was going to be primarily interior renovations, but it would be something that you would be looking at. They didn't require any extensive state permits with regard to water or sewer or traffic. That might be something that would just come in. We can combine preliminary and final and just bring it to you if they had their permits in hand. I don't see that happening a lot because most of the projects would come in, they could come in at preliminary, and there really is no time savings because now the statute dictates that final is done administratively anyway. And a lot of times as projects come in, as you'll see them, I provide a recommendation with stipulations. And they have to comply with those stipulations in order to get final approval. So it's very unlikely that many projects, unless it was a redevelopment of an existing site, would come in as a combined preliminary and final, because the stipulations would come in, I would want you to review and approve them, and based on, you know, public input, there could be additional stipulations attached to something. So not very often would that happen.
I'll just add one more point about the waivers. Administrative officer can also grant waivers for the development plan review process, or he can make a referral to the planning board to grant that waiver. So that's not there.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve, based upon the planning department findings, the special provisions for the development plan review, a positive recommendation to the town council for approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second? Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Dr. Benoit?
Yes?
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Menard?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes. So let me go back to the agenda.
I have a question about the,
The mic's not on.
oh, sorry. About the flooding remediation plan. I know it's not on the agenda, but it was sent to us. You know how we got the flooding plan?
The hazard mitigation.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
Hazard
hazard
mitigation
mitigation.
plan.
Sorry, I don't know why I was
Yeah.
saying flooding. Is that something that we have a deadline by which we have to provide the feedback on that?
There is a deadline on when you have to give us feedback. It won't be coming before the planning board though, so
Okay.
I just need you to send those copies to me. Did I give you the deadline? It's in the
I didn't
newspaper
see a
today,
deadline. Okay.
but I can send that.
Okay, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, of course.
Doesn't look like there is any administrative subdivisions for review. So then item number 11 on our agenda, I'm going to leave that over to Dr. Benoit.
I have no special request for any administrative subdivision reviews or.
Well, item number 11 is adjournment. Adjournment,
Oh,
sorry.
you do want that. Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, I will make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. That wraps up tonight's meeting. Thank you.